Hey, Rick Lovell here from Sykeston, Missouri. This year I'm fishing the FLW's BFL series on Kentucky Lake, and one of my primary baits this year is going to be the bass jig. And I want to talk about jigs today and how I set these up. I've got some young guys that I'm teaching how to fish, and a couple of them have been asking me to make a video, put it out here so they can watch it at home and work on some of their stuff. So this is for them and for all of you out here who would like to learn more about bass fishing and especially throwing jigs. One of my sponsors on the BFL is Live and Jen's Bait Bucket. LiveandJensBaitBucket.com is owned by Phil Darnell and his family, the Live and Jen. That's his two daughters, and so he named his company after his daughters. It's pretty cool. But he's a great resource for jigs, for spinner baits, for buzz baits, for bladed jigs. He also has a few soft plastics. Got a lot of great stuff out here, and I got to give him a shout out. He has really helped me out a lot. As a pro step for him, I've been able to design a few jigs, and it's pretty cool to work with him on it, and then to go out and catch fish on ones that you've designed. In fact, my personal best, 6 pounds, 13 ounces, right under 7 pound, biggest bass I've ever caught. I caught on what's called the Purple Craw, which is a jig that I've worked with him on to design it. And you can see it's green pumpkin and purple with some blue flakes on it. I'm using it's a Rage Craw style trailer. Most people are familiar with Rage Craw. This one is actually called a Tantrum Craw, which is made by another one of my sponsors, Lake Champlain Lures.com. Lake Champlain Lures.com is a great company. Deb and Eric, they do a great job of helping us out with soft plastics. I'll talk more about kind of what they do for me there. But these right here, commonly referred to as the Rage Craws, they're made a little bit different, but they work kind of similar to it. But let's start with the style of head on the jigs. Most people are familiar with the old round ball style. I don't have any of those. I know they work great. Gerald Swindle, he swears by them, the Bass Pros, but I personally don't use them. What I use is another assortment, and let me walk you through some of these. The one of them is the one a lot of people are familiar with, and that is the football head jig. And you can see this football head looks just like a football. Got the big line tie coming off of it there. And, the skirt, the brush guard, all these things. Fill through a red hook on this one just for fun. But this one right here, I'm going to fish in 25 to 50 foot of water. Big old 3/4 ounce, football head. Great one. The football head allows it to stand up better off the bottom. And when you're pulling it, it keeps that tail action going. And it's just a great jig to have on. But the style that I throw the most is a little bit different. It's called a brush head. And if you can see on here, you'll notice it is flat on the back of it, where it's going to sit flat just like the football head. But the line guide, or the line tie, is inside it. It's kind of built into it, gives it great weight distribution, helps it balance a little bit better. Also, see how nice and trim that is? When it's going through brush, man, it just goes right through the brush, and that's, again, why it's called the brush head jig. This is a 3/8 ounce Purple Craw. It's my go-to bait. I'm going to throw this one. If I'm throwing jigs, this is the one I start with. It's just a great all-around bait. Looks like a bluegill when it's going through the water. Looks like a crawdad when it's on the bottom. Just an all-around great jig. Now, there's another one that I've used also, and I put it down here somewhere. There it is. And it's very similar. It's actually kind of a blend of both of them. You see it kind of has that football head shape, but look, when I turn it, it's flat with the line guide. This is called the Arky head. This is great for skipping under docks, skipping under tree limbs. If I'm going to be doing a lot of that, this is more of the one I'm going to be throwing, because when it hits that water, it has a nice ricochet, and you can really, really get it out there. And I love these also. But let me go back now and talk about how to tell good quality jigs. Some guys go to their local store, wherever they can find them, and buy whatever's on the shelf. But one of the things you got to watch for, if you're really getting serious, is I prefer for my jigs, and let me find one that's going to show up really well. Yeah, this football head has it. I want you to notice on here, if I can get this skirt moved out of the way. You see that copper band underneath the head? There you go. You can kind of see there's some copper in there, right there. That's what's actually holding this skirt onto this jig head. It's a copper wire, and Phil and his company, the Bait Bucket, they give it a good tight spin. This skirt is not going to come off this jig. Some of those that you buy in the store, different stores, you'll notice they'll have a rubber band on them, and you get enough hook sets on them, you get it kind of hung up in some brush or something, go to yank it out. A lot of times that skirt will come off of it, or it'll slide around. You got to adjust it, different things like that. But at Bait Bucket, they wire tie all of their heads. This one here is just a brown football style. This is just like the one that was used to win the Classic last year. Brown green pumpkin trailer. It's a great one here. It's got that wire tie on it. That is a great way to keep it on there. Another thing too, a lot of the jigs that you buy in some of the stores, they come with like 25 to 30 strands on here. This one here is a brown purple. It's a great one that Phil has. They have 25 to 30 of these strands. Look at this green pumpkin one he has. I think he has 60 strands on here. Well, what does that matter? Well, it gives it more of a pulse, gives it a fuller body, just makes it look more realistic. And I highly recommend those higher strand counts. It gets better hits, I believe. I really like them. Okay, a couple other colors. If I'm in a place where I'm working more off, say they got a lot of sun perch or they got a bluegill, a lot of the bait style fish that have the orange bellies on them, I'm going to go to this one. You can see that is really going to imitate that bait fish and get a lot of strikes. Now, sometimes I'll go to the swim jig head, and you can see the swim jig is more of the traditional style. A lot of times I'll use the Strike King version, and this is a great one right here. It's got the little rattles in there. But even on this one, as good as this jig is, you'll see that it has fewer strands on it. And some guys like that. I prefer a thicker skirt on it, and so Phil ties them. You can see this one here, this silver and gray. I think he calls it the Ghost Minnow. It's got a lot more strand on it. I just prefer that. Here's another one. It's a brush head white. Some people say, well, I've never seen a white crawdad. Well, I'm not actually fishing this as a crawdad. I'm going to fish this as a bait fish, and coming through the water with all of that action. If I'm in a place that has a lot of shad, that's a great imitation right there, and they're going to nail it. It's a great one to have on board there. Another thing I want to talk about, I've mentioned a little bit about my trailers. So this one here, you can see, is that I'm going to keep referring to the Rage Craw because it's the style that it is. And most people are familiar with the Rage Craw. This one is, excuse me, from Lake Champlain Lures, and it's called the Tantrum Craw. And I will break off 2 of the little pieces of it, and then make sure that my hook is coming out right behind the eyes. That way, when a fish goes to strike at it, they're going to be grabbing hook as soon as possible. And I really like that. I have a pretty high success ratio of hookups. When they hit it, they're going to hit it right. Sometimes if my trailer is too long, they'll be snapping at that trailer, and they'll be biting these chompers off, and I won't be getting the hook in them. And so I want that hook in them, so I pull a couple of them off. And again, this is a 3/8 style. If I'm going up to the 3/4, I might actually leave it on there, but that's what I'm doing on this one. But this is that Rage Craw style. Again, it's called the Tantrum, and it has a lot of flap to it. When it's going through the water, one of my other sponsors is Denali Rods. Super, super sensitive rods. On one of my Denali Covert Series rods, I can throw that jig out there, and I'll let it fall on a semi-tight line. And as it falls down, like if I've got a school of fish out there, I've done this several times. I'll throw it out there, and I can feel those flappers as they fall. You can feel them vibrating on your rod there. And there's been several times where I didn't feel a strike, like a thump or something that you normally feel with a jig. I just stopped feeling the flap. And as soon as I know it's not on the bottom yet. And so when I don't feel that flap, that means a fish has got it in its mouth. And so I just reel down, set the hook, and I've caught several fish doing that before. It's a great little technique to use. So let's say that I still want action, but I don't want quite as much action as these Tantrum Craws. I'll go down to a crawl that Phil makes. I get these from Bait Bucket, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what he calls these, what the technical name is, but I'm trying to hold it so you can see there is a little bit of a wedge shape to it. So it's thicker out here than it is right here on this edge, and that still produces a little bit of flap, but it's not quite as aggressive as the other ones. So sometimes I'll go to that one. And then if I want to back off that, the next one is from Reaction Baits, the Sweet Beaver. Let me get one of these out here for you. This one here, there's very little flap to it. These little side things here will produce some flap, but this is just a nice, thin, flat little tail right there. And so if it's cold water, especially if it's under 55 degrees, especially if it's down in the 40s, then I'm definitely going to use this one. Now, I'll also use it if I'm punching, but we're not talking about punching right now. I'm talking about the jigs. And so sometimes I'll use these on the jigs when I don't want quite as much action. And then my other one that I'll use is from Missile Baits, the D-Bomb. Again, this is a very popular punching bait, and it's great for that. It moves a lot of water, these ridges. But I like these tails here too. They're a little bit longer, and they have a little bit more action, but I like these also on my jigs. Now, from that, there's another style of jig that I throw a lot, and I get these also from Bait Bucket, and it's called the bladed jig. Now, the bladed jig, most people know it by the name chatterbait. If you've throw the Z-Man chatterbaits, they're very popular. Phil makes these also, and they're a little bit different style. They kind of have that archy head on it there. But like this one here is called the Muddy Bream, and I just got these from Phil. I cannot wait to throw these in brown water. I think it's going to be just money. But you can see it kind of has, it's almost like a crappie, kind of like, I don't know. It just looks like a lot of different things. But in the water, this is going to be a go-getter, and I'm going to show you also what I'm going to put on it. There's another one that Phil has that is called the Ghost Minnow. And then some of them it's got a purple flash to it, and that's this one. This one looks just like a crappie in the water. If you're in a body of water where the bass are eating crappie, then this right here is a great one to throw. And the soft plastic I have on this, if you guys throw Kitech swim baits, you'll think this is a Kitech. This is actually also from Lake Champlain Lures. They have a version of the Kitech that they make. I order, my number one color that I order from them is called Smallmouth Magic, and it is, again, it's just money. But this one right here with this blade head, it just works great. But sometimes the fish don't want the skirt on it, and I'll get those jig heads. Phil makes them for me, and I'll throw it right on that swim bait. And then there might be some days where they're not hitting this like they should. That's that Smallmouth Magic color. There might be some days where they're not hitting it like they should, and I'll go to just a straight Zoom Super Fluke and put that on there with this bait, and it'll work great. I've got these. I've got them in black also. Depends on what I'm throwing it on. It's a great one to have. I also use these on black and blue jigs. Black and blue is another color that if you're not throwing black and blue, then you're not catching as many fish as you should. Because if they're not hitting, the green colors and the oranges and some of those, then you need to go to black and blue. It's a silhouette, and they'll strike at the silhouette. So whether it's on a swim jig, it's on a bladed jig, it's on a brush head, whatever, there's so many different options. And then every once in a while, you got to give them a little bit more color. So another one that a lot of people are familiar with is the Spike It garlic. This is a dip that you dip in your trailers. Now, if you're going to dip these, don't dip the whole thing in there. Just dip, just a little bit of the tip right here, just enough to give it some flash. But if I'm fishing the co-angler series, okay, so I'm a co-angler. I'm going to be fishing somebody else's boat on the BFL. They don't want me to take a chance on spilling this because this is going to dye their carpet. So what you do is you go get markers, and these are Spike It garlic markers. It's the same thing, it's just in different colors. And so, whatever color I'm needing, that's what I'm going to throw. And I'm going to use these. Let's see, I think I've covered everything. If you have any questions, just put them down in the comments. If not, again, go check out liveinjinsbaitbucket.com. Check out LakeChamplainLures.com and throw those on a Denali rod, and you'll be having a lot of success out there on the water. Thanks.